Many people and fan communities are so attached to a piece of media that they dream of being able to experience it again for the first time, with none of their existing knowledge and emotions. It isn't very often, however, that that wish is granted. Danganronpa fans, however, have gotten our wish. The Danganronpa fandom has been in a fervor ever since the announcement of Danganronpa 2x2 last year. Not only is it a full remake of my personal favorite entry in the franchise, but it's also a reinvention of the story from the ground up, an entirely new rendition of this story and these characters that we all love. If you've clicked on this video, I'm sure you already get the gist of 2x2, so I won't do a lengthy explanation. Instead, I'm going to use this opportunity to share my speculations and hopes for 2x2. As well as why I believe it's the perfect game in the franchise to give this treatment. In particular, I'm going to take a look at each character in Goodbye Despair, reflecting upon their role in the original narrative, and using that information to lay out what I believe is most likely to happen with them in this reimagined scenario. I stated a few moments ago that I believe Danganronpa 2x2 to be the perfect game in the series to create a reimagined scenario with. The core of my belief in that lies in how many different versions of its cast already exist, as well as the world-building elements put forward in the game that allow the Killing School Trip to be the most repeatable killing game. To elaborate on that, I want you to look at the original game and the journey its students go through. From being normal students at Hope's Peak to becoming the remnants of despair, later becoming their simulated selves, and then finally recovering from both the despair-fueled and hope-driven brainwashing they were being affected by. My point is that these characters at such young ages have already lived multiple different lives, and to me it makes sense thematically to shake them up once again and fundamentally change who they are in this reimagined scenario. I believe there are two different ways the writers are going to do this, depending on which version of Danganronpa this game takes place in. If it's in the V3 canon, it seems obvious to me that the reimagined scenario will be treated like a reboot of Season 2 of Danganronpa, likely Season 4, where former beloved characters are brought back for another round, memories freshly wiped. This would be a fascinating turn of events, but what I think more likely is that the remake will be in the original timeline, and the new scenario will be a product of the simulation being rewound in a sense. The program will be rebooted after having failed to properly fulfill its goal. The characters' minds will be snapped back to the beginning, similar to how we saw everyone glitching towards the end of the original game, but with their consciousnesses properly restored. Monokuma in this scenario would likely be a lot harsher with the motives. Hard to fathom, I know. As well as stricter with the school rules. He may even use the fact of the simulation as a tool throughout the narrative, instead of just at the end. With all that being said, it's time to discuss who I believe will be the new victims, culprits, and survivors of this exciting new story. To do so, I came up with an idea where I'll be assigning each character a probability ranking, listing their likelihood of being a victim, culprit, or survivor in ascending order from least to most likely. I'll be making these predictions in order of deaths in the original game, so obvious spoiler warnings. Yes, this video has been filled with spoilers already, but like, seriously, now's your chance to go play the game yourself if you haven't already. To start off, we have Byakuya Togami himself, I mean the ultimate impostor. There's so many interesting things they can do with this guy in the new scenario. I'm just dying to see him have more relevance throughout the story. That being said, there's no way he's making it to the end. He's far too useful in the group dynamic, and also is a perfect character to involve in a crunchy late-game case. This makes him being a survivor the least likely outcome, with an almost a 0% chance in my opinion. I could absolutely see a case where he collaborates with someone, disguising himself as them so that they can create a crime where it's unknown whether the victim or the killer is the imposter. Or maybe disguising himself as a suspected mastermind or traitor, to bait the true person into killing him. Regardless, him being a victim again makes the most sense to me, with him being a potential culprit also being interesting. Oh, Teruteru. I really don't see this guy making it far. If anyone out there is genuinely a fan of his, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to see people rooting for this guy. Unfortunately, he's loathed by so many fans, including myself, that unless Team Danganronpa is cooking up a crazy character arc for the guy, I think he's on the chopping block early game. I think he's going to be something like a Chapter 3 victim, with the likelihood of him being a culprit or survivor much lower. If there's any character I want to see make it further in this new scenario, it's Mahiru. She's a character I find to be dripping with potential as a rival in trials, as an investigator, and as a late game ally. She was truly taken away from us too early in my opinion. I love her harsh, witty personality, as well as the warmth and kindness she shows. Having her in every trial would open up the opportunity for mountains of photographic evidence, intelligent rebuttals, and even the masking of the truth that we know she's capable of. She could be an early game antagonistic figure, who later opens up to and works with the protagonist, providing incredibly useful testimonies in case 4 and 5. She'll definitely be a survivor in my opinion, but I could also see her being a tragic late game victim. I don't think she'll be a killer, as she seems more likely to cover up for someone else's crime than to commit one herself. Peko is someone who, even more than most other characters in the Goodbye Despair cast, I think 2x2 was made for. Her harrowing sacrifice and devotion to Fuyuhiko made for a fan-favorite dynamic, and I think it paved the way for a brutal inversion in this new story. I want to see Peko live longer than Fuyuhiko. I want her to mourn him and discover who she is when she's not a tool for her master, to truly accept herself as a person. It may be extremely predictable, but I think inversions of these duo dynamics is one of the things 2x2 most clearly wants to execute. She will, in my opinion, be either a survivor or a late game sacrificial killer. It's honestly a toss-up which one I find to be more likely. I just don't think she'll be a victim. Ibuki is such a weird one to me. I truly don't know what to do with her, as she's a wild card of a character and could go so many directions that I believe would be plausible. One thing I know for certain is, I don't believe she'll be a victim. Case 3 of Danganronpa 2 has been received so poorly, partly due to the random nature of Ibuki being chosen as a victim. I think 2x2 will try to rectify that a bit by having her take a more prominent role in the narrative, likely as a survivor. She very neatly fulfills the niche role of airheaded female survivor previously taken by characters like Hina and Akane. But I also have this weird concocted scenario in my brain where our beautiful bubbly Ibuki somehow becomes both a culprit and a survivor simultaneously? More details on that later, when we get to the character this idea is paired with. So, I really don't like Hiyoko. I understand the unfortunate circumstances she's dealt with, but I don't love how she's handled in the story, so my predictions for her go one of two ways. My preferred option is that she'll be an early game killer. I think she's the most likely character we've discussed so far to be a culprit, as we already know she has violent tendencies and unregulated emotional stability. It could be a really sad case and would allow her to go out with a bang. I'd be happy with this, as it'd give her something to do in the story and make her death a lot more impactful. However, I do also acknowledge that she had a budding character arc in the original game that was sadly cut short, and I'd be delighted to see it come to fruition in 2x2 with her survival. As long as she's not a victim again, I'm happy. When I think about characters negatively impacted by the writing decisions in Danganronpa 2, the first character that comes to mind is Mikan Sumiki. And no, this isn't just because she's a culprit. I would love to see her kill again in 2x2, this time as herself and not as a brainwashed ultimate despair. I want to see her snap. I want to see her fight back against all of the ridicule and bullying and harassment she's endured her whole life. It would feel so cathartic to hear her lash out in a trial, and to empathize with her as I sadly sent her to the gallows, despite wanting so much better for her. She is, in my opinion, the most likely character not named Hajime to reprise her role in the story. She's incredibly likely, in my opinion, to provide investigative help early game, but with visible signs of her mental state deteriorating until she pulls the trigger on a crime. And if that doesn't happen, well, she'll probably be a mid-game victim. She's not making it far, I don't think. Nekomaru is the exact kind of comic relief male survivor that Danganronpa is so consistent about. If they keep him human this time around, I think it's very possible he survives until the end. Other than that, I don't really have that much to say about him. We know he has a murderous side to him as seen in the original game's Chapter 4, but I can't find a way to slot him in nicely to a potential case. Either way, that means in my eyes he's least likely to be a victim again, but it's certainly possible. Team Danganronpa, I swear, if you kill off Gundham again, I will be writing a strongly worded negative Steam review. Ahem. All joking aside, I really want to see Gundham make it out this time. He's easily my favorite Danganronpa character, and I know he's beloved by the fanbase as well, and even by the writers. I think it would be a gift to all of us to see our special animal caretaker boy find his way to the finish line. His resolve to protect life made him a very interesting culprit, so much so that I don't think they'll give him that much spotlight in a case again. He could be a really shocking victim, seriously, that would be heart-wrenching, but I think, and I hope, he'll survive. There are so many interesting things they could do with Nagito Komaeda in 2x2. I've seen the idea thrown around a lot of him taking the role of protagonist, but I personally think his thought process and antagonistic presence is better served from an outside perspective. His investigative ability is also far too good of a tool to give the player access to, as he often has the truth of cases figured out long before Hajime does. What do I think he'll be then? Why, I think he'll be the culprit behind a perfect crime. Similar to his unsolvable scenario in the original story's Chapter 5, I think he'll use a combination of his wit and luck to do something similar, but this time as the killer. This does mean I think he'll be making it far once again, but a character like Nagito is too good a mystery element to let survive. Remember earlier when I mentioned a potential case where the impostor collaborates with someone for a case, making it difficult to know who the victim is and who the culprit is? I think Nagito is that person. He'll almost certainly be a culprit. I find it much less likely he'll be a victim again, and certainly not a survivor. Chiaki Nanami is one of, in my opinion, the most tragic characters Danganronpa has to offer. She's a girl who never gets to fully exist, sculpted by the simulation as she is. She's literally meta-narratively coded to be your sidekick character, doing her best to bring back hope to her classmates, ultimately doing so by method of sacrifice, outing herself as the traitor. Her kindness and unwavering friendship she extends towards the others makes her out to be someone who could never intentionally be the culprit, and I doubt she'd be tricked into it again. However, I don't foresee her being a victim, as that would strip from her the plot relevance that is so necessary for her character to work. But even with those possibilities being written out, I can only see one way for her to survive. And it's to be the protagonist! Yeah, that's right, I'm breaking the format of this video entirely. Chiaki doesn't fall under my typical rankings thus far. Instead, I think she's going to take over one of Hajime's roles within the story. Which one is entirely dependent on which role Hajime fulfills himself. I think it's a very real possibility that Izuru Kamakura surfaces much earlier in the story of 2x2, ascending to his role of mastermind and leaving the spot of protagonist wide open for Chiaki to fill. This would be a moment of stark determination in her as she takes a more direct role in protecting everyone. We already know her investigative ability is more than up to the task, as she's able to piece together multiple cases right alongside Hajime, as well as guide him to the correct conclusions. I think she would make for a remarkable protagonist in 2x2. But I also think it would be incredibly interesting for her to usurp the role of mastermind from Izuru. I did say one of Hajime's roles. Did her status as an AI program? It would be so fascinating to see her directly corrupted by the Monokuma virus, resulting in a twisted version of Chiaki that weaponizes her intelligence and makes a mockery of her compassion. It would even play into her status as the ultimate gamer, allowing her to literally play the rest of the cast in one big game. I firmly believe Chiaki will either be the new protagonist or the new mastermind, and I can't wait to see which one she fulfills. Finally, my predictions reach the survivors of Goodbye Despair, starting with Akane. I've never found Akane to be a particularly interesting character, and I don't think that can be remedied by having her take major involvement in a case, as I believe she's one of the least likely characters to have a motive to kill. There's a possibility that she gets herself executed by rebelling against Monokuma, but if that doesn't happen, she's probably going to be an early game victim. I doubt she'll become a murderer, and there's no way she's surviving again. Kazuichi is a character who could very well fall under any category. I could see him making it to the end again, as he's a comedic relief boy who is generally liked enough both among the cast and the fandom. I've seen it tossed around that he'll be a victim at the hands of Sonia, but I find that to be way too obvious of an idea. What's most likely, I think, is that he'll be a mid-game culprit, someone expendable that the team of writers can sculpt a case around. I find both outcomes to be more likely than him dying at the hands of someone else. Speaking of Sonia, while I don't think she'll take Kazuichi's life, I absolutely predict she'll be a killer. I in fact believe her to be the most likely person out of everyone in the cast to be a culprit this time around. The idea is just so delectable to me. I loved her in the original game already as just a strange, outgoing girl with a sharp tongue and quirky hobbies, but I want to see her put those hobbies to use in a crime. Using both her fascination with serial killers, her military experience, and her devotion as a princess, I think the writing team could build one hell of a case around her. And remember that weird idea I mentioned earlier in my Ibuki predictions? Sonia is the girl that it ties to. For some reason, I've cooked up this crazy idea in my brain that instead of having two victims in Chapter 3, it's going to have two culprits. And the murder is going to happen in such a strange way that both culprits kill the victim at the exact same time. The logistics of how this would work are beyond me, but I believe that Sonia and Ibuki would be those culprits. And during the trial, Monokuma would deliberate that whoever receives the most votes will be the one executed, while the remaining blackened will be allowed to continue their school trip. This would result in Sonia's execution and Ibuki's survival, which I think would be deeply fascinating. There is always the chance that Sonia is a victim, but I believe in Killer Sonia so strongly that it's my only prediction for her. Just as I believe Sonia to be the most likely killer, I believe of everyone, Fuyuhiko is almost guaranteed to be a victim this time around. In fact, I think he's going to be the first victim. Predicting Danganronpa has reached a strange state where the least likely first victim in each game is the person that ends up being most obvious for it to be. I think 2x2 is going to counteract this, not by giving us a random first victim like Ibuki or Nekomaru, nor by playing into it by killing off Hajime or Nagito that early. I think Fuyuhiko is popular enough and interesting enough to crown the honor or curse of first death. He got enough time to shine in the original story, and his VA also had plenty of work as Kokichi, that I think it's time to allow other characters, most specifically Peko, their time in the spotlight. There is a world where he's the first culprit, but either way, I don't think he's making it past that first trial. And finally, we reach Hajime. As the protagonist, I oddly think Hajime is one of the least susceptible to change characters in the entire story. His role may end up being extremely similar due to the nature of his place in this cast of characters. I don't think we'll have a repeat of V3 with a killer protagonist, nor do I think he's going to be a victim, though admittedly that would be shocking and hilarious. I've already partially gone into my Hajime predictions during the Chiaki segment. If he bows out of the story early, it's because Izuru takes over. And I think it would be very fun not only to get more in-game characterization for Izuru, using his many talents to outwit and to manipulate the surviving characters, but also to have a Danganronpa game where the mastermind is present throughout the narrative, open and proud about it. Well, that's everyone. I am so excited for 2x2 and to experience a new story with these characters I love so much. I can't wait to see what directions they're taken, and I'm sure even if my predictions are completely wrong that it'll be a good time. Let me know what your predictions and thoughts are in the comments, and I hope you liked the video. I'll be streaming my Let's Play of Danganronpa 2x2 on this channel, so be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see that. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have a great day!